All right, hello people. This is something I've been thinking about recently, and we get questions on in the Discord all the time. So I think it'd be helpful for new players. So this is basically just a presentation and deck list on budget Kano deck building. So first, just to give a shout out and kind of a summary, this is all going to be basically based off of Blazing for Lethal's ICBM list, which is what most Kanos are on right now. Basically, as we've talked about in a lot of other videos and deck techs, I'm not really going to go into this deck specifically or the function of the deck, but just know that's what it's based off of. Basically, if you don't want to run this version, you can take out the red overflows and red and yellow overflows and add in 3 red spindles and 3 random zaps, and that'll essentially get you the pre ICBM deck. But this is going to be based on the ICBM deck because that's the new hotness, but it's also just kind of a general rule for Kanos. So just real quick, I'm going to be going over these slides, but in these slides and in the description of the video, I will have a link to a deck list with versions that you can kind of reference. So if you go here to versions, you can see I have a minimum recommended and then the upgrade path that I personally recommend. You can go to this selection right here if you want to see the different versions, and then also there's matchups there too, even though there's not a lot of sideboarding in Kano. But anyway, so let's go over this presentation now, and I just kind of want to talk through what you should be focusing on as far as deck building, what are things you can kind of swap out versus what are things are like set in stone. So I kind of have a few sections here, but let's go ahead and start. So tools, where do I do this? View, present. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's start out with the equipment, and I kind of have some sections on what's required versus what's you can kind of flex. So this is the baseline required equipment. We have Ragamuffin's hat, which I'm now realizing I forgot that in the thing. Poor Ragamuffin's hat. So let's add that real quick. Ragamuffin's hat. Cool. View slideshow. Cool. So basically, there are 5 pieces of equipment. There's really no variation you can have here. I mean, if you were really tight on money, you might could replace a Metacarpus node with like Blade Beckoner's Gauntlet just for the block, but that's really not recommended, and this card isn't that expensive, so I would not recommend that. But essentially, all these are needed. The only one that's actually kind of expensive is Storm Striders. They're about $60 right now, but that's honestly cheaper than they've been historically. I think I paid like $95, or I think I paid $90 for mine, and I thought I was getting a deal. So definitely, a relatively good time to buy. Ragamuffins is required for combo. Storm Striders is required for combo. Spellfire, it's not required for combo technically, but it's really nice on combo, and we don't really have any great chess piece alternatives. Crucible is pretty much the only weaponry run other than Waning Moon, which goes in the sideboard, which we'll talk about later. But these are the required kind of base loadout equipments that is needed. Okay, why is it being like this? Okay, I guess we won't be able to do that in do presentation mode like that. Okay, so we'll just look at it here. So next up is just some few more required sections. I've kind of bunched them up in what I call different classifications. So the first is what we call the core of any Kano deck. So these are absolutely required in not almost every version of Kano you run is going to run these cards. 3 Aether Wildfires, 3 Blazing Aether, 3 Lessons in Lava. These are absolutely required. There's no arguing that you need these. You have to have these. Lessons is just the most flexible card we have in the deck. You can essentially view it as another Blazing or even sometimes another Wildfire if you need to find a Wildfire. Wildfire basically fuels our entire game plan as far as killing on combo turn, and same with Blazing Aether. So these are non-negotiables. I'm not going to go over the function of each of these cards, but I'm just calling them cord. Watch my other videos or other tutorials on Kano on YouTube if you need to learn why these are so important. Next is what we call extenders. So these are required for the ICBM deck list, but they may be flexed in other lists. So they're not really required on every Kano deck, but in this Kano deck they are. So we have 3 Sonic Booms, 9 Overflow the Aether Wells, and 9 Open the Floodgates. The purposes of these cards is to basically allow us to extend our combo. Instead of being, a Wildfire, Lessons Blazing, we can do Wildfire, boom, into Floodgates, into draw 2 cards, into Overflow, into Blazing, so just going from 3 spells to 5, 6, 7, 8 spells, however. Next up is potions. These are pretty much required. Not pretty much required. These are required. So now we're running 3 E-Pots and 3 Potions of Deja Vu, and then 2 to 3 Clarities. The rest of this is going to be assuming 3 Clarities. But if you only want to run 2, you can just take out a clarity and add a random zap, and we'll get into the zaps later on. But essentially, these cards are required. You shouldn't be running less potions than you should be running at least 3 energy, 3 depot, 2 clarity. Next are just kind of other random cards that I think are required. So Kindle, definitely need it. It's relatively cheap, so I don't think there's really any argument for not running it, even if you're trying to save money at this point. Gaze the Ages, this one's a little more expensive. I think they're like around $5 a copy. They may be a little cheaper, but these 2 cards are, I mean, I would not recommend not playing with these cards. If you're really tight on the money, then, maybe skip out. I think you can still win games, but for the most part, these are really required. Kindle just basically allows us to get another resource, blue ideally on our turn, and gives us an amp. Gaze basically, lets us opt 2 for free in a lot of cases. Prognosticate is a zap, and it's basically the best zap we have in the deck. So it's, probably less required than Gaze and Kindle, but still I wouldn't run Kano without it. And then Aether Flare is not as required as Gaze and Kindle. Again, you could probably run another zap in that spot if you really wanted to, but for the most part, we're all on it, and I wouldn't recommend being off of it. So basically, what's left? If that's the core of the deck, what's left? So we have 9 other blues, and these can be some combinations of zaps and gems, which we'll get into. And then we have 15 sideboard slots. So this is kind of the basic summary of what most of us are sideboarding in at this point. But there's a little more room in the sideboard depending on what you want to do. So most of us are on 3 Wounded Bulls. This is just really good in the Enigma matchup. Oh, and just to be clear on sideboard, we mainly run this into Earth Heroes if you want, but it's mainly for the Enigma matchup and the Kano Mirror. So right now I'm on 3 Wounded Bulls. That's what most of us are running. It's just really, really good into Enigma. Some people, like Alf, for example, he's on 1, or the last list I've seen of his at least, is on 1 Nourishing Emptiness instead. But I think the 3 Wounded Bulls are just absolutely gas into Enigma, so I recommend it. Waning Moon, this is pretty much required. It's super cheap, so hopefully not a big deal. Fiendles, this one you can, when you start out in the budget version, you don't need this. If you can afford it, get it, great. Or if you have other decks you can use it in, I recommend getting it there because it just has more crossover. It's like the only Kano card that has any crossover with other decks, really. Then Alluvian Constellas. This is really only needed if there's another local Kano. It's just for the mirror. And then some combination of the following. And you can kind of adjust these ratios. People have different opinions about it, whether you should run more 2 for 5s or 1 for 4s. But basically, you want to run 1 for 4s. And when we say 1 for 4, we just mean a spell that costs 1 and does 4 arcane. 2 for 5s, which is just a spell that costs 2 and does 5. Red Aether Spindle, I think you can sideboard in if you don't have Alluvian and Fiendles. I think that's actually a pretty good spot for it. And then we have been on Scours. Most people are off it now, but if you really like Hate Vincent, for example, you can add Scours because, I don't know, it's just funny sometimes to kill 9 rune chance at a time. So anyway, so now let's get on to what we call zaps. So as we said earlier, you need 9 other blues, some combinations of zaps and gens. These are basically zaps, and overflow and prognosticate also both technically qualify as zaps, but since I'm considering them core of the deck, I don't have them in this section. But technically what a zap is, it's all based off of the card called Zap, this one right here. But it's basically a blue 0 cost, 1 damage arcane spell. And these are just really good because we can use them as middle spells, and not really good, but these are good because we can use them as middle spells in our combo without having to use an extra resource. So the base budget of this is starting with 9 of these cards. If you run 2 clarities instead of 3, it would be 10 of these cards. But basically, you can pick any combination of these you want. It really doesn't matter. The only one that I didn't include on here is Perennial Aether Bloom because we think that card is actively bad. But if you really like the art, feel free to run it. It really does not matter. Like in 99% of cases, run whatever is cheapest or whatever you looks cool. If you are really sweaty, Destructive Aether Tide, Aether Arc are widely considered the best, followed by Arcane Twinning and Pop the Bubble. But these 2 cards right here are expensive. So honestly, they would be the last thing I would upgrade if you were tight on money. So again, just really pick whatever's coolest or, cheapest or you already have starting out. So next up is just the sideboard. This is kind of what I would recommend as far as the budget starting point. So 3 Aether Quickenings, 3 Photon Splicings. Again, these are just 6 1 for 4s. So if you have Eternal Infernos or you have is it Scalding Rain, I think is the other one. You can use those in that slot. And then 3 2 for 5s. If you have Swell Tidings, you can use them in the spot. 3 Wounded Bulls and a Waning Moon. So these spindles will be what will come out if you do get an Alluvion and Fiendals. So just be wary of that. But basically, these just come in, like I said, for the kind of Earth tempo matchups that we run it in. So when you do side these in, here's what you side out: red and yellow Floodgates, yellow Overflows, Crucible of Aetherweave for the Waning Moon, Kindles, and then 2 Sonic Boom if you're bringing in the spindles. Next up is just as far as upgrade priority. In my opinion, Will of Arcana is the first, especially if you're just purely talking Kano here. You can just take out any random zap that we had in this list that you have in your deck to replace it with. I would recommend Fiendals next. You can do it before Will if you're into other classes and they use it. It's probably a better way to spend your money. But I think as far as, if you want to win games on Kano, I think Will of Arcana is more important. And then again, it's really used in the Enigma and Earth matchups. And it's used in the Kano mirror too if you don't have Alluvion. Well, you could use it, I guess. Technically, this one, the one resource or the one AB on Spellfire is actually probably better. So then Alluvion Cancel is only needed if you have a local Kano. It's like $20, so it's not super cheap. But if you have a Kano, it's probably worth it. And then the last is kind of, there's kind of 2 options. You can either get an Eye of Ophidia, or you can upgrade your bad zaps, 1 for 4s, 2 for 5s. And when we say bad, I mean like if we look at Voltic Bolt, for example. If we look at Voltic Bolt, there is Swell Tidings, which is just literally a pure upgrade from that. So that would be considered an upgrade there. So in my opinion, if you just play Kano and you just want to get as many improve your win percentage as much as possible, I would save up for an eye before even bothering investing in apps now or zaps. But I do understand getting 3 destructives is way cheaper than buying an eye. So honestly, do what you can stomach financially as far as upgrade. But I do think from a pure I want to win games perspective, you're literally better off just never upgrading your zaps and getting eye. If I had to pick one, I would take an eye over the upgraded zaps. It's basically in summary. So again, we just have gems here. Will of Arcana is strongly recommended because it, lets us go over high prevention. So again, that's kind of the first priority upgrade. Eye is really good in our deck and expensive, but I think you are better off saving for Eye versus upgrading zaps. But again, if you can't stomach paying, over $250 for a card or however much they're going for nowadays, feel free to never upgrade it or do it very last. And again, whenever you get these, just replace whatever the worst zap is in your deck as required. Yeah, so I mean that's pretty much it. I think that may be helpful for new Kanos as far as deck building, and we get a lot of questions about what can I take out versus what I can't take out. So I'll put the link to the deck and the slides, the deck. Well, I guess the deck in the deck, the February deck, in the video description. But let me know if you have any feedback or questions. I'm happy to answer it, and feel free to drop by the Kano channel in the Discord. Everyone is super helpful.